Very warm welcome, friends, to the second edition of Elets Diagnostics Leadership Summit. I am your host, Mrinda Bhattacharjee, and at this panel discussion, we will discuss how IVD industry transformed during COVID-19 pandemic and scope and challenges. It's my privilege to welcome the esteemed panelists, Dr. Arjun Dang, CEO of Dr. Dang's Lab, in Mr. Indranil Roy Chaudhary, Group COO, Apex Kidney Care, who will be the moderator for this panel discussion. Next is Dr. Manoj Chugh, Vice President R&D Regnans, TransAsia Biomedical Limited, Dr. Anjali Tiwari, Lab Director and Technical Manager at Regency Hospital Limited, Kanpur, and Dr. Shelly Mahajan, Lab Director and Clinical Head for Genomics at Caring DX at Mahajan Imaging, as well as Lab Director and Pathologist at Mahajan Diagnostics. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. And now I would like to invite Mr. Indranil Roy Chaudhary to moderate this panel discussion. Mr. Roy Chaudhary, please.
So, Mrinmoy, thanks to you for the introduction for all the panelists, and thanks to the organizers of Elets Diagnostic Leadership Summit, as well as the sponsors. And my heartfelt thanks to all the panelists who have taken time from this busy schedule to join this. So just to start with, before we go to, because we'll do it basically in the form of some questions which our esteemed panelists will share their views upon. But before we go to that for the benefit of all the participants, just a brief perspective of the Indian diagnostic industry. Well, though it is not very well defined or very well structured, and there are multiple sources which quote different numbers, but the fact remains that it is a turnover of approximately 1,250 million USD, which is expected to grow at a compounded annual growth rate of 7.5% over the next 5 years. Now, what is interesting, this projected growth rate of 7.5% is almost 3 times than the projected growth rate of the global IVD industry. That makes it very interesting and a very sweet space for all the investors, for all the industry people, and more importantly, it means that more and more percentage of our population will be able to avail the diagnostic services across the length and breadth of the country. So that is very encouraging to look at. What is also important is there are certain very inherent factors of this diagnostic industry which makes it very unique. And of course, one of them being it's a highly fragmented, decomposed market, which means majority of the market share is with unorganized players, and that leads to number of challenges that all the people face in this. We will discuss on those one by one, but without taking too much of time, I will straight away go to the particular points that we want to discuss today. And the topic of today is how COVID has impacted the Indian IVD. Okay. So with that, I will invite straight away the first question or the first point of discussion is what are the wellness opportunities or what are the impacts of COVID in the Indian diagnostic industry? I would request Dr. Dang to start with his views on that. Dr. Dang, over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chaudhary, for the question, and a big thanks to Elets for having me on this very prestigious platform today. And actually, this is a very pertinent question to kick off this session. And I feel that the COVID-19 pandemic has forced all of us to press the reset button, actually sit back and actually see what could have been done better, what are the various changes, and what are the different kind of things that need to be changed from our side as well. But what we actually see in the consumer psyche or the patient psyche is an extremely heightened sense of awareness when it comes to the quality of a good lab report, also the heightened keenness for wellness. Now, obviously, it's been very, very unfortunate that throughout the COVID pandemic, a lot of us have had times of uncertainty, lost a lot of close family and friends also. So actually now people have that inherent want of actually wanting to be fitter, wanting to be well. And for that also, what has actually worked very well and is a positive for the entire diagnostics industry is that people themselves are actually coming forward for these preventive checks. So these preventive checks and the wellness market has been there for quite some time now. But people now have actually realized that a stitch in time does actually save nine. That a good lifestyle and a good well-being overall works on a better immunity. And then if there is a future wave or a surge, obviously there's going to be timely vaccination as well. But then the immunity has a crucial and a critical role to play in our health.
Thanks, Dr. Dang, for sharing your views on this very, very pertinent question, basic inherent immunity and people being more conscious. Dr. Mahajan, anything you would like to add to this?
Thanks, Mr. Chaudhary, for inviting me to talk on this, and thanks, Elets, for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this very esteemed panel. I totally agree with what Dr. Dan just said, and I mean, just would like to add a few more points that till now, globally and not just in India, the approach to wellness has always been reactive more than proactive. But what COVID has taught us is the importance of being proactive, not just in communicable diseases, and but to also apply that in non-communicable diseases like cardiovascular disorders or even mental health being. So what we can use, all we have also learned in COVID, during COVID pandemic, is use of data, the data that we get as a healthcare industry, and to use that for better analysis of what more can be done for health promotion and prevention rather than just sick care. The data can help in better designing of public health programs, which may force the people to make better lifestyle choices. And as Dr. Dang mentioned, that kind of awareness has already happened in the population in general, to make better lifestyle choices, more smart lifestyle choices. It can be as simple as just realizing that eating a home cooked meal, the home cooked meal, the importance of eating a home cooked meal with your family, which has significantly can significantly improve the mental health as well as the health in general. So these are a few points which I wanted to add. And apart from that, of course, to understand the segment specific needs, it may be in terms of socioeconomic status, or it may be in terms of professional industry one is a part of. So I feel this is an opportunity for better designing of public health programs and disease prevention programs.
Yeah, absolutely, pretty much so. But also more important is awareness among the people, which we all spoke. So it's a fallacy. Actually, none of us forget to take our vehicles for an annual servicing and spending 20,000, 25,000 on that, whereas the same individual thinks four times before spending a few thousands to check his own health as annual servicing. So we'll have to address that. Fine. Thanks to both of you for that. Now that also now brings us to one of a very, very sensitive point in this industry, which is in fact a challenge that we are facing. Unlike the other industries of, unlike the other verticals of healthcare like pharmaceuticals or hospitals and all, we find that in diagnostic there is a lack of uniform guidelines, and also quality standards are not same across the geographies. Now, how does this impact the industry? And but more importantly, how does it impact the patient population? I would request Dr. Chuk to share his views on this. Dr. Chuk, you are on mute. Kindly unmute yourself.
Sorry. At the first outset, I would like to express my profound sense of gratitude to the organizers to bring like pathologists, clinicians, developers on same platform. It really helps. Coming on to your question, Dr. Chaudhary, as you have given the numbers already, we are growing 3 times faster compared to global growth. However, the most exasperating fact, if I would like to highlight, is like we are highly import dependent, and that is like up to an extent of 70 to 80%. And there are reasons for this. Indian med device industry is like, I would say, second to none. We believe national guidelines and regulatory mechanisms can be like customized and calibrated in order to boost like Make in India campaign. I can highlight like three different approaches which we would like to see. Number one, for example, is currently DNC Act 1940 is the one which regulates manufacturing, distribution, sales for drugs, cosmetics, and med devices together. As we understand, government of India is working on to bring a new law. But once again, they are about to commit the same mistake and keep drugs and IVD together. I, as representative of IVD industry, we support Niti Aayog's 2019's draft where they urged government of India to separate the bills for IVDs and drugs because we believe they are entirely different. Second could be like import monitoring. We are highly concerned with like fake certificates or certificates issued by the certifying agencies which have dubious credentials. They are really undermining efforts of genuine certified manufacturers who themselves opt for like voluntary certification processes. Regulators definitely need to play a key role in weeding out such non-authentic certificates. Another point of contention could be like pseudo manufacturers. When I say pseudo manufacturers, I would like to bring this point that many of the distributors have started taking advantage of the law which is existing. They import ready to use raw materials in bulk, which are ready to use reagents. They just label it and pack it and they call themselves as manufacturers. So regulators definitely need to differentiate between an actual manufacturer and a pseudo manufacturer. Another last point I would like to bring in is like we appreciate the efforts from CDSCO and central government. They have come up with an online portal for license application. They have laid down clear guidelines by MDR 17, which are some of the great initiatives. However, state FDAs, they also need to streamline their audit, approval, monitoring processes. They need to actually fix the maximum timelines to decide and conclude for each manufacturing license application. What we are observing is like it takes like months, 6 months to get a manufacturing license. And in between, they are like totally non-reciprocative or I mean, approachable. So there are few gaps which can be addressed, but I am upbeat about the present situation. Things are improving for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Chuk, for that. The fact remains ultimately for all these gaps which are available there, it is the patient who suffers at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Now, what I also want to understand from what the panelists feel, unfortunately, in our country, in spite of everyone knowing all these, among the clinicians, sometimes we see that they almost equally accept the results of a diagnostic test from any lab it comes, whether it is coming from a standard, authentic lab which follow the quality standards right to the every details, or even it is coming from a local mom and pop stores. So that is one challenge. I'm not saying it's all across, but it's in majority of the country. And let's understand India is a lot of rural than urban. So a bigger challenge even in the rural part of the country. So what is Dr. Dang's view on that?
Thank you for that question. Again, like you said, that this is the burning question. This is what dictates how physicians actually accept the reports. And obviously, there will be outliers, but I definitely and very strongly believe that the discerning physician till date realizes and acknowledges a good quality report. In automated parameters like clinical chemistry, may it be the methodology or the equipment or the various quality checks that are used, or in a expertise dependent test such as histopathology or any specialized immunofluorescence, for example, they will be aware when they see a report if it's clinically correlating or not. So in a majority of these cases, obviously, we must appreciate that the discerning physician is acknowledging a good quality report. But from a diagnostics perspective, and what we do on a daily basis as well, is that if there is any upgradation in a particular technology, like I'll give you a simple example of maternal markers. There are various platforms on which we run these, but obviously the referring obstetrician or the gynecologist, we usually reach out to them in cases of an abnormal report. Explain to them that this particular machine is FMS certified and whatever credentials it has. What does the test actually mean? What should they probably do after that? So it's only an interactive discussion among your fellow physicians and colleagues is what I feel can help us tide this wave of actually making the physicians more aware, because I think it is our responsibility and duty to actually reach out to the physicians, discuss reports, keep them updated on different technologies, and make them more discerning in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dr. Dang, for that. So thanks for sharing your views. Now that also brings us to one of the very interesting, a prospective view. Now we know that whenever there is a new drug discovery, there are certain protocols which are being followed for a registration of a new chemical entity, clinical trials, phase 4 trials, trial ethical committees, goes through DCGI, the pharmacovigilance part, all those are measured and all those. However, in diagnostics, we hardly see anything. Nevertheless, the industry continues to grow, newer tests continue to come. And this is where I will invite Dr. Anjali Tiwari to share her views. What are the new markers that we can look at? What are the new tests which are relevant to the Indian population? We can look at how can we establish the new concepts among clinicians. Dr. Tiwari, request you to share your views from your vast experience on this.
Thank you, Dr. Indranil. And first of all, I want to thank Elets organizers basically to give us a platform to share our views. And on this issue, I would only, share my view that, I mean, the newer biological markers definitely need to be developed. And the more important thing where we have to, and perhaps, I can request people like Dr. Chug, that more and more make in India reagents are required, because to overcome this expensive test, and this is the basic need of the time, that we have to give a very accessible test and approach, readily available in almost every town or even in remote areas. So newer technologies we have to develop, and with the invention of biosensors and chips, where, I mean, we must thank COVID for one reason, that one positive which we have seen, that due to COVID, at least PCR based lots of these small machines are available now even in CHCs and PHCs. So forget about small towns. So my view is that we have to basically concentrate on bringing such technology at lesser cost and which are user friendly, where more of expertise is not required. Perhaps we can, always, like for microarray or mass spectrophotometry, cytogenetics, like NGS, we have seen a shift from basically as a research parameter to making it as a diagnostic tool. So these kind of technologies are required. Like CRISPR is, again, we have a lots of faith on CRISPR technology, that perhaps this will definitely bring in various tests, and which will help us in if we start using that with the AI and algorithm based on AI, then perhaps we can even lead to personalized medicines. And as far as this concept of newer tests giving to clinicians or sharing with them, I totally agree with Dr. Dang that it is our responsibility. And when we say our, it's not only the pathologist's responsibility, but even the industry people have to share their newer technologies and the concepts with them. Because here again, I would use one example of COVID, where I personally felt that there was a lot of misuse of IL-6 and D-dimer. Without understanding the use of these two parameters, everyone was writing left, right, and center, and even the consumer was coming and getting it done. So I'm sure that not only in tier two cities, you guys must have faced similar crisis of these two parameters. It was so difficult to get these reagents. So I feel that it's our basically basic responsibility to share these concepts with them, and we have to tell them that it's not only important to write a test, but how to interpret it, and I mean that is only possible with by a dialogue with them. So, like, I'm basically a institution-based practitioner, so we get this opportunity very frequently. I know it's very, very challenging for standalone labs, but I think we have to bear the responsibility.
Yeah, the challenge is immense, Dr. Tiwari, for the industry and standalone labs. I'm sure Dr. Dang will and Dr. Manoj will agree, even Dr. Mahajan. So, yeah, very true. But yes,
Here
we
I
have
would
to.
Here I would like to add one point. We from industry, we would like to welcome this kind of approach. If we can get feedback from doctors, clinicians, pathologists when we are developing the test, it could help us and it could help pathologists. It could be a win-win situation because we do understand that the burgeoning growth of IVD industry and increase in number of tests, reagents, uh, I mean, what I would like to say is like, although greater purchasing options would offer financial savings, but on the flip side, if we see, it would also lead to lack of standardization, and I mean, it will impede integration of laboratories. So here, what we can collaborate with clinicians and pathologists is when we are developing the test, if we can like tailor-made the reagents, tailor-made the interpretation, inferences, it could be like good for the healthcare system on the whole.
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Chug. And also, I feel in that particular context, apex institutes in the countries like AIMS and PGIs and all will have to come forward and do some clinical trials to find out the clinical significance of this. I'm sure it's going to be a concerted effort by all, which is going to benefit the population. Yeah. So now let's go to the next point. That's typically for the industry, but also important for all of us to understand. There's something called as the test to accession ratio, which means for every sample we collect, which we call as an accession, how many tests against that we are doing for a particular sample. Now, when we see this number, there's a huge variation from the Western world to our country. I'm sure Dr. Mahajan, Dr. Dan will agree with me. So typically, US and the Scandinavian countries are among the best, and India it is pretty much low. So that's something very very critical, not only from the industry point of view, but also for a clinician, that if a sample is drawn, to be on the safer side, to rule out many of the diseases, how important is it, the test to accession ratio? Dr. Dang, please.
So, Mr. Chaudhary, again, a very, very relevant question. And so I did some research, and what I find is that there is actually a drastic difference if you look at the Western countries. So I'll just take a minute and mention the major chains that I've been able to get some data on. And if you look at a Quest or a LabCorp, say in the US, their accession to test or test to accession ratio is about 13 to 14. When you look at South America, like a Flori or a DASA labs that are there, they again are at about 8 to 9. Then, if you look at the UK, such as the TDL lab or any NHS lab, they usually do about 7 to 8 tests per accession. But then, when you come to India, it's such a drastic drop. I was reading the study by Kotak that said that the average number of tests per accession is about 2 point something, or it's 2 to 3. So again, it is very, very understandable. that the countries in the West, obviously the OPD diagnostics are insurance driven. So even if a person goes to the physician with a minor cold or a cough, and that's like a regular flu, they write down tests from A to Z and try to complete the entire repertoire of tests. But obviously in India, what's very important is, because diagnostics are paid from one's own pocket, is that the physicians also try and minimize the expense on the patient when it comes to OPD diagnostics. And also keeping that in mind, it's very important that these same physicians, when they're writing down these tests, they actually practice the skills of good examination, taking a proper history, so that actually they can narrow down and give the minimum number of tests. Also, very common practices that labs such as ours usually use is that, probably if you have a person coming in with a fever, and that's why it's very important that a doctor is present even in a lab. And usually pathology labs are considered as a back end kind of a practice. But what we have here is that we discuss with the patient, we see the prescription, and suppose the doctor has only written a CBC with an ESR to start with, we try and draw some extra serum, so that if the CBC or the platelet count is probably low, and like right now it's the dengue season, and in the evening if we see that the platelet counts are low, we just might add a malaria and a dengue on the serum sample that we have drawn. So again, presence of mind is very, very important. But I don't think this is going to change for the next few years, at least till we actually see the complete influence of insurance on OPD diagnostics. So it's very important to be thinking fast and thinking on our feet in these times.
Yeah, absolutely. The insurance plays a major role, but what we will sincerely hope that diagnostics is such an important part, whether it is imaging or it is pathology, because based on that, the fundamental decision on the treatment protocol is decided. So it's all the more important that we would really hope that the clinicians really look at it. Okay, fine. Now, COVID has one of the impact of COVID has been people's reluctance to move out, even to do the regular tests like thyroid or blood sugar and all. While home care and home collection has picked up, there has also been a lot of advent of glucometers, and this brings us to the point of care testing, POCT, what is called. So I would like to understand, I would like to request the panelists, what is your view among the acceptance of POCT among clinicians? Dr. Mahajan, if you can start with, please.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point to discuss, Mr. Chaudhary. It cannot be said enough that point of care tests have they're a very good way of decentralized, rapid, low cost, highly specific kind of testing, and they also have help us in enabling an increased diagnostic capacity with a rapid turnaround time, especially during the peak of COVID, right? So, but where is this applicable, especially in diseases where there is an increased prevalence of, for example, infectious diseases or lifestyle disorders? It has been there for a while. It has been, we've been using it for blood glucose testing at home, or a urine pregnancy test, or for ovulation testing. So it has been there. But what COVID has taught us as well is that it can also be applied on molecular technologies. There is now Abbott's ID now, for example. We could never think that a molecular technology can also be brought to people's homes and give fast and rapid results with, of course, a low throughput. Of course, gold standard still remains the gold standard because of because you need higher accuracy to confirm a diagnosis and to act upon that. But definitely when there is a very high load on in vitro on the IVD industry for giving rapid reports on a high volume sample load, then definitely POCT, point of care diagnostics, is a very, very useful thing, and more and more. And it does give us confidence that even molecular technologies can be brought to home. That said, you're right that there has been an upsurge in home collections and requests for not coming out of the home, but in fact, we've also got requests of why don't you get a portable X-ray or a portable ultrasound and just come home, and we are ready to pay anything and all. There are certain things for which people do have to come to a diagnostic facility. That said, point of care diagnostics is definitely can be the next thing where it can help people a lot.
Yeah, and also, regarding this point of care test, there are some reservations still exist among the clinicians about the accuracy of these tests, which also needs to be addressed at some
Yeah,
point of
but to
time.
that, I'd like to add that there is always a well-designed algorithm to judge at what point do we need the next step of test, or at what point can we accept the point of care test.
Yeah.
So COVID has definitely sort of accelerated the POCT trends in terms of how to design those algorithms, how to come to the same page between clinicians and diagnosticians, and these algorithms have really helped us in our peaks of COVID pandemics.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Tiwari, any point you would like to add on that? Dr. Tiwari, kindly unmute yourself.
Sorry. Uh, Till now, we were basically using these POCT devices mainly in hospital setups. But I personally feel that now even clinicians have started accepting it, because this helps them in, giving them results in their clinics themselves. And, like there is definitely an increase in the use of such smaller equipments. And this will definitely help in the remote areas if we can use appropriate software, and integration of smartphones. Then the reports can be available not only with the patient but even to the caregiver. So then perhaps some kind of treatment can immediately start, and this will also help the clinicians that, I mean, there will be lesser spillage of patients from their clinics. Like once they write the test, then they go to some lab, they might get some suggestion elsewhere, and sometimes they don't come back. So the second visit is often reduced in the clinician's office. So definitely, there is a trend these days that they have.
I think we lost her, maybe due to connectivity. Dr. Chug, you want to add anything on this?
Dr. Indranil, I can clearly see a shift from outmoded processes from lab testing to home testing, and there are reasons to it. And I would also like to add that not only for infectious diseases, but for example, at ICUs, at ambulances, I think that the point which Dr. Tiwari was point to make, for example, I would say like brain stroke. So those kind of tests like POCT devices are coming. We are ourselves developing one test. So these kind of POCT tests not only can help at the home, but also at critical care centers or to the caregivers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, bringing in that perspective. Okay, now one more interesting thing I thought we will discuss for the benefit of everyone, and that is Google has effect in all of our life.
Yeah.
People Google and people decide on everything. Some of the places, Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, people are even going to the clinicians and asking, why have you not prescribed this medicine, which has been launched in US last week? Okay. So consumers are, the trend is coming. Consumers are deciding many things, even in the field of medical science, where they are not qualified or experienced to do so. Now, whether that's good, bad, ugly, time will only tell us. But at this point of time, an interesting question is, who controls the market of IVD industry? Is it clinicians? Are patients going completely by what the clinician says? Or the consumers are also deciding? The consumers are deciding that I will go for IL-6. Dr. Tiwari was making a point that even many cases, people are going for IL-6 on their own. IL-6 D-dimer and ferritin, ultimately leading to a crunch in the availability and a bottleneck, serious bottleneck being created. So who is controlling the market? I would like to bring in Dr. Tiwari's views on this. Madam, over to you.
This is a very interesting question, and it is quite complex also, as it appears very simple, but it is quite a complex thing, because a decade or two back, if you see that usually the clinicians used to decide that what test, based on their preferences, definitely, that what test is to be done, and there were various constraints, there were various considerations by them, like lesser money should be involved, and they were not prescribing many tests and all. But in last decade or last 2 decades, we can say that we have seen a paradigm shift here. As you correctly said, that the Google doctor at times suggests lots of tests, and this half-baked knowledge of the consumer also, leads to various kind of testing. And with smartphones again, because now they know, like investigations, available investigations, then they have become quite aware also, like accreditation bodies and all, they know like what labs are accredited or which are not accredited. So definitely our consumer also has become quite aware, and they know their rights. So now, I mean, they choose very intelligently, and they also expect that the lab, whichever is giving them the report, is accountable. So like we have to be very, very careful while handling them. So I would only say that, and especially like the government also has stepped in by capping of pricing and all that. So, and this again, for every small change which has come, any order which comes through government immediately is covered by media. So people have become difficult. I mean, clientele is difficult now, and they are aware. So we know that, like, basically, I think in future it will be the patient who would govern the market.
Yeah. Okay.
It will not be because
only point here is what we envisage, while the government brings in all the price caps and everything, most welcome, they should also bring in the relevant quality standards necessary for the industry.
Yes, definitely.
Then everything will be in congruence. Dr. Mahajan, your views on this particular point?
Yeah, so I think it kind of comes in with a package, right? If we are expecting our patients or our population to be more aware of their health and get regular preventive health checks done, then obviously this will come in a package, because everything they know is through Google for sure. And fortunately or unfortunately, they trust the Google information more than maybe a medical practitioner. That said, that's the screening side of things. That's the preventive side of things, where we do want the people to be more aware and more, knowledgeable about the tests and their importance. But the problem comes when the same is applied on clinical side of things, or the treatment side of things, or diagnostic side of things. That, for example, what we saw during COVID, we would get WhatsApp forwarded prescriptions on WhatsApp, which were like, WhatsApp shows Uber forwarded many times. So people would come with those prescriptions which were issued to some patient during the first wave, and trying to use the same treatments or the same tests during the second wave. Those prescriptions were like, I myself have received those prescriptions from multiple patients, the same prescription. So that's where the problem arises, right? That's where the gap occurs between what should be the case, that is, the clinicians should be the decision makers when we are trying to diagnose a disease. But unfortunately, the patients are still taking those calls. What that led to was, like, the patient would say, what is, like, I want to get the test done, what's the problem? The problem is that it leads to an unnecessary burden on the diagnostic industry, which again we saw in the second wave. The hospital beds were full unnecessarily, we were out of oxygen cylinders. Why was that? Because the moment people were being diagnosed of COVID, they would just get an oxygen cylinder and keep that at home for maybe if I need it like next week or something like that. Similarly, this happened in during for COVID diagnosis. be it RT-PCR or HRCTs or D-dimers and IL-6, as ma'am just mentioned. We were overburdened. We were out of reagents. We were, struggling hard to give the turnaround times that were expected in a disease like this. We can't give a report 4 days from now for COVID, right? So these are certain problems, and I think the bottom line remains the communication channel, as Dr. Dang also mentioned earlier during this discussion, the communication channel between the clinician and the diagnostician, and the trust of the patient on their doctor when it comes to treating or diagnosing a disease. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a ton for that. Now that brings us to another interesting point for this industry. Unfortunately, again, we do not see a well-defined and uniform pricing policy across the industry. The same test is being offered by certain labs at an exorbitant high price, or certain labs at an unusually low price. And many times, as industry people, when we do the mathematics, we know that how is it possible to give that test at that price if you are running the basic quality parameters. Okay, so there's a dichotomy on both sides. So the point is, there's no clear cut pricing policy. Dr. Chug, as an industry expert and someone who is on the other side of the table compared to pathologists, clinicians, what is your view on this?
Dr. Indranil, as you rightly pointed out, there has to be a balance, first of all. There has to be a trade-off between the cost and the quality. As you said, rightly said, that we know that at one particular level, we know that below this, quality cannot be maintained. I just had a look at the tender we received just today. Two of the companies from Bihar, they have quoted rapid antigen test at merely 7.49 rupees. If I just see the cost of the consumables, like the cassette, the swab,
My God,
it
my
is
God, I've got nothing to say.
okay, 7.5 rupees. And when we started selling a rapid antigen test, we sold it at 450 rupees. So I would say that COVID-19 has exposed what was lacking and revealed what is now possible in diagnostic testing. It's like we know that where do we stand, regulatory policies. As I said, monitoring is very, very important. Quality monitoring. It's not only like you give manufacturing license to one person today and he is going to maintain the quality throughout the tenure when he is going to supply. So, and second point is, producer must be incentivized to innovate and to produce. It often takes like years of toil, countless man hours, millions of dollars of investment when we develop something, and you just like arbitrarily fix the price value and kill the market. There have to be a logical approach to it, I would like to say, in that sense. What I would say, like for example here, is if we have strong monitoring mechanisms to weed out these cheap low quality tests, we conduct some post market surveillance data, we do some random testing, and most importantly, if we do some quality certification for at least the bulk tenders before we accept a bid, that would help. In nutshell, I would like to say that we need to keep pricing within control and keep diagnostics accessible and affordable to masses. However, there has to be a trade-off, as I said, and balance need to be created so that development as well as innovation can thrive.
So basically, what you are suggesting is a balance between the industry interest as well as the interest of the mass population,
True.
ultimately leading to something good for the which can go back to the population. And I think in that the regulatory bodies, as you rightly mentioned, the government has to play a critical role, no doubt about that. We have been time and again, we have been representing to the government, we have been trying to tell them about this. Yes, there has been quite a lot of progress, no doubt of that, but we have still miles to go. While COVID had its impact on the society, and there has been huge scars that it has left behind. But maybe COVID has also taught us that what are the major loopholes, major gaps in our IVD industry and overall healthcare as a whole, and what is it that it needs to be done. Yeah, so I think we had a very impactful and very participative discussion. I only hope that the attendees have really benefited from this. My heartfelt thanks to all those who attended this session. My heartfelt thanks to all of you who have participated, as well as to the organizers. Mrinmay, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Indranil Roy Chaudhary, for moderating this panel. It was really insightful and a lot of information that passed from your side to the beneficiaries, that is our audience. I think RT-PCR along with NABL, these were two catchwords that came out of this pandemic. Many people, in my observation, are now seeking only test form NABL accredited test labs. So that is really some good takeaways from this pandemic. Thank you for moderating this panel, and thank you other panelists to be able to join this session. As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present certificates, and I would like to yeah. So Dr. Indranil Roy Chaudhary, thank you for moderating this panel. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Manoj
you.
Chu, for participating in this panel discussion. Thank you, Dr. Anjali Tiwari, for participating in this panel discussion. Thank you, Dr. Shaili Mahajan, for participating in this panel discussion. Thank you, Dr. Arjun Dang, for participating here. Thank you very much, all of you. Stay safe. Next session begins in 10 minutes. Thank you all.
Thanks to all the participants and the organizers. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you.